Ricochet, a game whose greatest claim to fame is not being famous. It doesn't have a story, and it wasn't adapted from a third-party mod like Team Fortress or Counter-Strike. It was developed solely by Valve, and, like Deathmatch Classic, you've probably only ever played it because you bought the Valve Complete Pack. But what it lacks in developmental interest, it doesn't really compensate for in gameplay. If you've never played Ricochet, I will explain many of the mechanics as the video progresses. But for now, let's examine some of the game's empty servers to see what horrors the community has managed to conceive. We will start, as always, with a baseline of sorts. This server was running RC Deathmatch, one of only 3 official maps for the game. But I made sure the first server wasn't all too normal. It had 2 bots in it, Elon Musk and Doge. This one came with the alleged gimmick that killing Elon Musk's bot would result in a tweet being sent to him in real life. I did manage to find a Reddit post that mentioned this server, as well as a link to the Twitter account itself, so presumably this gimmick did actually function. As you should be able to tell from the gameplay, the main form of movement in this game are these little triangle jump pads that allow you to spring from platform to platform. All of the official maps and many of the community-made maps are like this, occurring in a giant void with a few suspended platforms. I hopped around for a while and managed to score a couple hits on Elon Musk's bot. But seeing as this is an official map, we won't be staying on it for too long. You've heard of RC Arena. Actually, you probably haven't. But now get ready for RC Arena Broken. This was a community-made spin-off version of an official map. Instead of all the platforms being intact and actually usable, this one featured platforms with segments that were cut off, broken, hanging, and drifting away. The creativity and attention to detail in this one was pretty appreciable. Eventually, while moving around with a spectator cam, I came across something out of bounds. I looked for a way to access it normally, but I could not find anything. I even decompiled the map and opened it in the Hammer editor, but I still couldn't find anything. But that's probably just due to my inexperience. Regardless, I will show you what was out of bounds. There were 2 floating enclosed boxes that appeared to have teleporters attached to them that I couldn't find. Here's the first one. I'll let you read what it says. And here's the second one. Now for something a bit more normal. This one was hosted by Gold Source Saturdays, who you might recognize from some of my other videos. You'll be seeing a lot of them in this video, seeing as they were essentially the only server with any kind of custom maps. Judging by the name, I hoped that this map would transpire in a giant pair of trousers. Instead, pants just refers to the creator of the map, as indicated by this texture. I quickly noticed that the jump pads on this map seemed to be rather poorly calibrated. It seemed that most of them would catapult you so far that you'd slide right off the target platform. This is best demonstrated by the actions of the bots. I actually sat down for a while to just watch them humorously careen off the edge. Eventually, another player joined the game. Unfortunately, he didn't seem too keen on being able to play the game, or, having any motor functions. What's that? Dust 2 in literally every first-person shooter game imaginable? This is actually our obligatory Dust 2 segment of the video. This is the first of 3 versions that I found while playing Ricochet, and the closest to the original. This one also seemed to have only one spawn point, as I spawned inside at least 2 other people. Perusing the map a bit, I could tell that this was pretty much just Dust 2 with no alterations made. It was also at this point that several other players started joining the server. The red guy you keep seeing me decapitate is actually another player, and he's not the only one you'll see in these clips. This is also a good time to explain some of the shooting mechanics in this game. The main goal, as with any FPS, is to eliminate other players. The most common mode is just deathmatch. Player with the most kills gets the most kills. If you left-click, you shoot a disc that can ricochet off walls and can knock other players around, potentially knocking them off of any platforms and into the void below. Upon right-clicking, you shoot a decapitator disc that consumes all 3 of your discs in exchange for 1 disc that can instantly eliminate players if it hits them. You'll see me using that one the most in this version of Dust 2 due to its enclosed spaces. Anyway, a few more players joined, who I decapitated a few more times, but there wasn't much else to see on this version. The next version had been slightly infected by the Ricochet virus. Much of its landmass had been stripped away, revealing the void and being replaced with jump pads. This one also had a few power-ups placed throughout. These power-ups are exclusive to Ricochet and include such things as more powerful shots and shots that slow down other players. I jumped around for a bit and managed to trap myself on this balcony. There was a very funny haha cat picture on one of these boxes. There was this cliffside-esque area with another power-up, and a Gold Source Saturdays mural on the wall. But still, this version was too similar to the normal Dust 2, so let's take a look at the last version I found. Now, Dust 2 has been fully infected and taken over by Ricochet. No major land masses have been left unaltered, and the entire map now consists of a series of platforms and jump pads. Some of the jump pads catapulted you far enough that you could almost string together jumps seamlessly. This version, like the last, also had a Gold Source Saturdays mural on the same wall. Visually, this map was one of the most boring ones I visited. It was just a few platforms floating in a pitch-black void. I decided to leave it in though, because like the Pants map, the bots on this one would sometimes just jump into the void. It's pretty humorous to just watch them vanish.
Minutes remaining.
Instead of just having the traditional circular platforms with the normal jump pads, this one integrated some brushwork platforms. Unfortunately, the bots seemed to not enjoy these new structures as much as I did. Their pathfinding was apparently rather broken on them, as none of them moved the entire time. This did, however, give me free rein to just run around decapitating them. In this one, I spawned inside of another bot, immediately got eliminated, and then spawned in, attempted to move, but this happened. Yeah, this one clearly has some collision issues. In both of these corners, where there is evidently nothing, there is still a bit of collision that both players and bots can stand on. This led to the bots eventually stacking up in these corners, up to a maximum of 3 from my experience. It's also important to note that, although I was literally on top of a bot, I could not eliminate them, because you can only shoot straight forward in this game. Anyway, I dislodged myself from the stack and examined this corkboard for any job listings. I then realized that one bot at the very tip-top of the map had taken dominion over that entire layer of platforms. So, I decided that I ought to take it back. After, not that many attempts, I witnessed these two bots partaking in an anime battle. Ultimately, though, I decided to intervene, end the battle, and take back the platform. The only other thing I have to note about this map is that standing on this vending machine essentially makes you impervious to all damage, because there is nothing else on the map on the same level as it, and you can't aim up and down.
8, 7.
This was another interior, or mostly interior map. The bots' pathfinding was broken on this one as well, meaning they all just sat in place. The map itself was a loop, with few elevation changes and several power-ups scattered here and there. I ran around on metal grating and through steel-clad corridors, and managed to gain somewhat of an advantage by getting up on this ledge-type area. This map also gave a great opportunity to test out the namesake of the game. It may be less apparent in maps where you're just jumping around constantly, but the discs that you throw can ricochet off walls and kill opponents that way. There were a couple times on this map where I managed to achieve some cheeky decapitations by utilizing this mechanic to my advantage. Usually, though, unless you're a god-tier frisbee golf player, this mechanic is really only useful for spamming discs to get kills in interior maps. This was another Ricochet adaptation, this time of the map Stockyard from Half-Life. I guess someone must have forgotten to use their pop filter because the wind sounds on this map were overwhelming. The main modifications made to this map for Ricochet were the additions of a few jump pads on some crates. Whoever built this room should probably fire their architect, seeing as how they forgot to design a floor. I'm guessing that an open drop into the void below is probably an OSHA violation, and a large fine at that. Talk about an open floor plan, am I right, guys? Fortunately, there were a few jump pads scattered around, although the fact that you can't jump in this game made it impossible for me to scale these stacks of boxes with conventional means. I messed around with the bots for a while, and then noticed these upper areas and ran around trying to find an entrance. Eventually, I overcame my blindness and spotted this elevator. A quick test determined that the safety features on it were, in fact, up to snuff, and I could not be crushed by it. The upper levels had a broken HEV charger, as well as this vent that was mocking my inability to crouch. I backed up in anguish, right into this hole in the floor. I really can't argue with this one's name. It was, in fact, an arena, and it was, in fact, themed around clocks. There was a massive timepiece below the center of the map, as well as a few numbers floating around here and there. Unfortunately, these didn't serve any functional purpose, leaving the map itself rather bland. Here we are again at the Battle of the Bands Ricochet edition. This time, our competitors include the Glups and the Shittos. Yeah, it seems like Gold Source Saturdays has a Glup Shitto map for every occasion. This one was pretty basic, although it did have the iconic sprite of this guy. I also searched Google for the origin of this image and couldn't find anything. So if you know why this guy is lurking around in my Gold Source maps, let me know in the comments. This one did not, in fact, have any rats racing around in it. Instead, it was a relatively standard Ricochet ordeal. Here, the animated, neon, highly saturated platforms you'd expect to see in most Ricochet maps have been traded out. This one also integrated some staircase-type platforms into its design. The bots, however, seemed not to understand how to traverse these, so I had to take their locomotion into my own hands. This one looked like it was suffering an eternal struggle to try to hit this other bot. I found it in my heart to help this poor soul, and I pushed him towards his objective. I really don't even know what to say about this one. Based on its name, it would seem that it was created specifically for this server. This certainly isn't where I'd choose to spend my birthday, I'll tell you that much. I'm guessing that Peter Piper Pizza and Chuck E. Cheese were booked. Although video games can't really eat pizza and open physical gifts anyway, so it's probably for the better. As far as I could tell, this one also didn't have any secrets or anything, so it really just is what you're seeing. I think I'll let the footage play out a while longer on this one. I've grouped the next three maps together for their similar visual styles. This one was quite spacious, with both some isolated floating platforms as well as some catwalk-esque platforms. There were also plenty of barriers set up around the map to allow players to use the Ricochet mechanic. The thing of greatest note, however, were these signs. Upon striking them with a disc, the disc would be teleported to the uppermost level. Because the bots preferred to jump to this area over others, I managed to exploit this teleportation to get a few cheeky decapitations. I will say, with great certainty, that the platforms in this one reminded me of supermarket conveyor belts. Really, the only other thing of note was that this one had an odd seam around the void. As demonstrated here, being knocked off on certain places allowed you to stand on the void without falling in. As soon as you moved even an inch, though, you would perish. This one was clearly inspired by that classic fairground ride. You know, the one where you have to avoid the rapidly spinning metal bar lest ye trip and fall into the abyss. Yeah, maybe that one didn't catch on. Spawning in and seeing that metal bar, my immediate thought was to jump onto it. Using the provided jump pads, it was not especially difficult to do so, and I even spawned right on top of it once. Eventually, after eliminating all the bots, jumping on top of the metal bar, and waiting for it to slow down, I managed to use one of the jump pads on the border of the map to access the upper area. There wasn't much to see up there, but I did find out that the electrified center below it will push you off if you get too close to it. So I guess that's neat. The bots on this one were acting quite goofy. After jumping around from platform to platform and engaging in a bit of trial and error, I managed to find a way to access one of the map's border platforms. Much to my dismay, it functioned like a conveyor belt and eventually pushed me into the void.
10, 9, 8, 7.
There wasn't much notable about this map design-wise or function-wise. However, I did manage to find a spot on the upper level of the map that I could use to camp the bots. So I guess here's a compilation of some airshot decapitations. This one seemed to be inspired by the Zen levels from Half-Life. It had organically textured geometry, as well as jump pads that were textured to look like Zen crystals. There wasn't much else to see though, aside from these horizontal lamppost-esque lights that lit up each platform from beneath. I would assume that the namesake of this one was the nucleus-like structure at the center of the map. Upon spawning in, I immediately brushed up against it to test its collision and see if I could interact with it. Examining it more closely, I realized that it looked a lot like the anti-mass spectrometer from Half-Life. It also seemed to be producing yellow discs from nothing. Given that these are usually only produced by players, I suspected that there was a bit more going on here. So I leapt away from the nucleus and onto a side platform which teleported me upwards. Up there, I eliminated a bot that was annoying me, and my attention immediately drifted to the teleporters. A quick experiment indicated that these brushes would teleport discs to where I had seen them flying out before. I accidentally touched the teleporter myself, but after going back up there, I spammed some discs into it. Also, if you haven't noticed by now, the map creator clearly really liked that teleporting sound effect. I hopped around a bit more and searched at the bottom of the map, but there wasn't much else. And that's about it. As I stated previously, I checked the other maybe 10 servers that were being hosted, and none of the other ones had any custom maps of interest. Most of them were just running one of the game's 3 official maps. Anyways, I appreciate you watching through the whole video. If you enjoyed, be sure to like the video and subscribe if you want to see more. As always, if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it in the comments section. Don't forget to tune in next time for a look at the gold source game that started it all.